Hi everyone, my name is Josh and I'm going to be talking about some recent estate sale finds. In particular, I want to show off these World War One journals I found. They're really interesting to look through and read both what the soldiers have to say about the war as well as some drawings, including drawings of mustard gas shells. So sometimes at estate sales you come across old notebooks and things that have handwritten notes inside of them. Now the tricky thing about coming across an item like this when you're at a sale and when you're in the moment thinking about whether you want to buy something is you actually have to take some time to read the material and get a sense of, when is this journal from and what is the subject matter that it relates to. Now this is something that I actually bought quite a few months ago, and it wasn't until I looked at this picture here and saw what it was describing that I understood that this was from World War One. This drawing depicts an original mustard gas shell that was used in the war, and it says there dichloroethylene, and it also describes gas. You get a little bit more detail when you start to look at one of the other pages here, and it says it has a little drawing of another shell, and it says TNT, and 65% phosphine, 20% I'm not sure what that says, diphosphine, and then 15% fluoromethyl something. This is when I really started to realize, like, this is describing a mustard shell used in World War One, and that's what this book is. So one of the other really interesting technical drawings in the book is of this Levin's projector, which is sort of a mechanism to launch mortar shells at the enemy. And as you can see, there is a date there, February 26, 1918. And that really sort of confirms this is definitely a contemporary World War One journal. So this is like a really fascinating piece of history to have, and you can see here he sort of lists his name and what squad he was in. So a lot of the first entries in the book involve descriptions of drills and how to do the drill, and everything involved in these drills. And there's says this one here says drill A. The journal goes, I think, up to like drill H or something, describing how they did these drills. So this is like a really incredible piece of history here, right? Because it's someone really chronicling their experience and what they've seen in the war. This journal is actually kind of a notebook within a little folder. It allows you to actually pull the notebook out of the folder, gives a little more portability and ease in writing. And tucked away inside one of these pockets, I found this. And so actually unfolding this, I found an inventory list, and it says property to be carried to Le Mans, France. And I checked up on one of the divisions that it describes in this journal, and the Wikipedia page about that regiment does say that that regiment went to France. And so this is just another sort of confirmation, and it's really interesting to read and see what they brought over and what the necessary supplies for the war were. So something else that's written in the journal is actually a squad list, and even further, there's some pages that sort of lists, which of these squad members which materials do they have, and what materials are they missing, so that they could stock up and see what supplies needed replenished. Now this other journal here is much more clearly a World War One journal. As you can see, it says My Diary, Soldier's Record. Now this actually lists right inside property of Schaefer, and it lists his company and his regiment, and as well as his grade. He was upgraded from a private to a cook. And this book actually doesn't have that much written inside of it. The first like 10 pages or so are all addresses and names of people. It's not until you get into the later pages where he's describing sort of the latitude and longitude, I believe, of the ship's position, and there is some detailing of some events. I think at one point he mentions that they encountered some ships, and as you can see there, you have June 20, 1919. And that there's one point where they say they encountered some ships and that they sunk them all. So actually the most interesting part of this diary is some things that are pre-printed inside of it. You see there it says, persevere with your diary. When the toil of the game is over, the book will be a source of pleasure never ending. I just find that kind of odd and ironic that they would put that in there. This book was published in 1917, so at that point, they had already been aware of how brutal the war was. Now, one of the other funny things here, pre-printed in the journal, there are some health hints, including to shun lewd women, as well as, I really like this one, if you feel off color, swallow your false pride and report the fact. So even though this journal has a lot of empty pages, just having a few accounts and handwritten pages from World War I and this soldier's experience is really incredible. So, I would recommend, anytime you come across a piece of something that is handwritten, that's a journal or a diary, take a look at it, read a little bit more into it. Even if it's not World War or war related, a person's account from the 1920s or the 1930s, that is something that is very interesting to read through. And this sort of book, these World War I journals can be worth anywhere from $50 to $100 or more, depending on how detailed the subject matter is, how much is written inside of them, and the same applies for older journals. Now, as far as what I'm going to do with these journals, I sort of intend to keep them, and I am interested in reading through them and transcribing them into sort of a Word document, and then if I can from there, seeing if I can find the soldier's his family and his being able to pass this on to current relatives of his who would be interested in reading about his experience and where he was and what he was doing in the war. Thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe. I'll be posting another video later this week with some more American War books and advertising pieces, which are really interesting. So if you subscribe, you'll get a notification about that. If you have any questions or comments about items that you've found, I'd be happy to help. Both giving the value of the item or maybe identifying what that item is if you don't know. And until then, guys, I'll see you next time.